In this video, we're going to explain the SUMIF, SUMIFS, COUNTIF, and COUNTIFS functions. And what these functions allow you to do is to sum or count with multiple criteria. So you could have a data set that has your sales, for example, for some products, and you could say, I want the sales for only product 1 with the color green, for example. Or I want the sales for only product 1 with the color blue. Or I want the sales for only product 1. Or I want the sales for product 2 that was sold in the US, for example, if your data has a country. So these functions allow you to sum or count with one or more criteria. So let's see that in action. Okay, so the first function we're going to speak about here is the SUMIF function. And the SUMIF function allows you to sum with just one criteria. So for example, here I've got a data set that has the product name, so product 1, product 2, product 3, and the color. The color could be blue, green, yellow, and they're in the region Asia, Europe, Americas, and then the sales for each product with a specific color to a specific region. So let's say these were sales transactions, and let's say I want to get the total sales for product 1. So if I need to just get the total sales for product 1, this is only one criterion or one criteria. So I can use the SUMIF function here. So equals SUMIF, and the inputs needed here on the SUMIF is, first of all, the range. And the range basically is where our criteria lies. So where is the range where our criteria lies? Our criteria is actually product 1. So the range of cells where our criteria lies is this column here, the product column. So I can just highlight that column here. And if you need to drag the formula down, you should usually absolute the range here, lock it down. And then the criteria, our criteria is actually going to be product 1, right? Because we want to sum such that the row here on the data set has product 1. So I'm going to click here on product 1. This is our criteria. And then the sum range is going to be the range that contains the values that we need to sum. So the range that contains the values that we need to sum is actually the sales column, right? So we're going to select the whole sales column here. And usually if you need to drag the formula down, you should absolute that as well by pressing F4. So if we close our brackets here and press enter, we get the summation for product 1. So I'm actually just going to give it here a number formatting. So 36,812. Now if I filter my data set here for product 1 and I check the summation here, it's 36,812. So the SUMIF function allows you to sum with only one criteria. The SUMIFS function is the same, but it allows you to add multiple criteria, to add 1, 2, 3, 4. It can actually work with one criteria as well. So that's why you can forget about the SUMIF function and you can only use the SUMIFS function because it works for one criteria as well only. So how does the SUMIFS function work? So equals SUMIFS. So I'm actually going to do the sum, for example, here to get product 3 and blue, for example. So product 3 with the color blue. Let's start with the sales for product 3 with the color blue. So first of all, the sum range is the range of cells that contains the values that we want to sum. So the range of cells that we need to sum is actually the sales column, right? This is where we need to get our sum from. So I'm going to highlight that and then I'm going to absolute it using F4. And then the criteria range 1 is basically the range that contains our first criteria. So our first criteria here, we want to get the sales for product 3. So where's the range that contains our first criteria? Is actually the product column here, right? This is the range that contains our first criteria. So I'm going to absolute that as well, just in case we want to drag the formula down. And then the criteria 1 is our first criteria. So where's our first criteria? It's actually product 3, right? Because we want to get the sales for product 3. And then the criteria range 2 is the range that contains our second criteria. So where is the range that contains our second criteria? Our second criteria is actually the color being blue. So where's the range that contains our second criteria? It's actually the color column, right? So I'm going to highlight that, Control-Shift down here to select the whole column, and I'm going to absolute that as well, just in case you want to drag the formula down. You should always remember to absolute your ranges if you're going to drag your formula down. And then the criteria 2 is going to be actually our color that we want to get the values with. So our color here is blue, right? Because we want the sales for product 3 that is blue. So I'm going to here limit my calculation to only 2 criteria, and then I'm going to add more criteria later. So I'm going to close my brackets here and press enter. And as you can see here, let's actually give this a number formatting. You can see here the summation is 12,905. So let's actually filter for product 3 that is blue. And as you can see here, the summation is 12,905. If we change here, because I've got a drop down menu, so we could change here to product 1 that is blue. So now it's giving us the summation for product 1 that is blue. We could also add more criteria even. So we could add, for example, that we want the region to be Asia. So to do that, we're going to put another comma here, and then criteria range 3 is the range that contains our 3rd criteria, right? So the range that contains our 3rd criteria here is the region column. And then criteria 3 is going to be our 3rd criteria. So criteria 3 here is going to be Asia. And if you press enter, you can see here we get the sales for product 1, blue, and Asia, 5,868. And if we filter here for product 1, blue, and Asia, you can see here 5,868. So I'm going to remove the filter here. So as you can see here, SUMIFS allows us to get the summation with 1 or more criteria. You could also add some numbers to the mix here on the summation. So you could say I want the products that have the sales amount greater than $2,000, for example. So we could write another SUMIFS here, and then the sum range is going to be the sales here, and then the criteria range 1 is actually going to be the same range, right? Because we want the sales amount for the transactions that had sales greater than 2,000. So it's only going to sum here on the sales column. It's only going to sum the rows that have sales greater than 2,000. Okay, so our criteria range 1 in this case is going to be the same as the sum range. It's going to be actually the sales column here. And I'm going to absolute that. And then the criteria. So to write the criteria greater than 2,000, you can't just write greater than 2,000 like this. This needs to be dealt with as a text. So you need to be putting it inside double quotes, and it's going to be actually greater than or equal to, so I'm going to put an equal sign as well. And if we press enter, we get the sales for the transactions that were greater than 2,000. So let's actually filter for the transactions that were greater than 2,000. So we only need to filter the transactions column here, number filter, greater than or equal to 2,000 here. And then if we press OK here, you can see here that if we sum the sales here on the transactions that were greater than 2,000, 119,375. Okay, and you can see here that all the rows here are greater than 2,000. And of course, you can add this condition where it's greater than 2,000. You can add it to more criteria. So you could have product 1 and green and greater than or equal to 2,000 as well. You could also write the 2,000 in a certain cell so as to make it dynamic. So you can put it in a cell, but in this case, for example, you need to concatenate the greater than or equal to sign onto the cell. So let's say I'm going to write the greater than 2,000 here. I'm going to write the 2,000 in this cell, in cell K16. So if I write 2,000 like this, so you can see here on the formula, we're concatenating greater than or equal to onto the value with the cell using the ampersand sign. So you need to write it like this, greater than or equal to, and then you concatenate onto 2,000. So this is how you can sum based on some numerical values. You could also add 2 numerical values at the same time by adding more criteria. So I could actually copy this formula here, and then I want it to be greater than or equal to 2,000 and less than 4,000. So I can make it like this, greater than or equal to 2,000, and then I would add more criteria like this. Criteria range 2 is actually the sales column as well, and then it's going to be less than or equal to 4,000 like this. Or I can put the 4,000 in another cell just like I did on the 2,000 and concatenate it. It's really up to you. what you want to do. And if you press enter, so this is the total sales amount for the transactions that were between 2000 and 4000. So if I filter here for numbers between 2000 and 4000, you can see here summation 70,127, and if I highlight this, 70,127. Now let's explain the COUNTIF and the COUNTIFS functions. So the COUNTIF and the COUNTIFS functions, what they do is that instead of summing like the SUMIF and SUMIFS, they just count the rows. So for example here, for the COUNTIF, let's say we want to get the total count for product 1. That is the count of the rows that contain product 1. So we're going to write equals COUNTIF, and then the range here is the range that contains our criteria. So our criteria is actually product 1. So the range that contains our criteria is this range here, which is our column for product. So we're going to absolute that as well. And then the criteria is going to be actually the cell containing product 1 here. So if we close our brackets and press enter, you can see here we get 14. Now, if we filter here for product 1, you can see here that we've got 14 rows containing product 1. And then we have the COUNTIFS function, which does the same as the SUMIFS, except it counts the rows instead of summing the values. So if we write equals COUNTIFS, first of all, we have the criteria range 1. So criteria range 1 is the range that contains our first criteria. So our first criteria here is product 3. So what is the range that contains our first criteria is going to be actually our products column. And we're going to absolute that, and then the criteria 1 is going to be product 3. And then criteria range 2 is going to be the range that contains the second criteria. So the second criteria here is blue, right? So the range that contains the second criteria is the color column here. So we're going to select that, Control Shift down to highlight the whole column. I'm going to press F4 to absolute it as well. And then criteria 2 is going to be blue. And if we close our brackets, press enter, you can see here it's saying that we have 4 rows containing product 3 and blue. So if you filter here for product 3 and for blue, you can see here we've got 4 rows containing product 3 and blue. And you can keep on adding more criteria. You could do the same here where you count based on numbers. So you could count the number of transactions where the sales were greater than 2,000. And you could add the criteria the same way you did here on the SUMIFS function. Now, let me tell you a tip here as well, which is that if you use tables, you're going to be able to update your ranges without needing to expand them. So here, if I create a table out of this data set, which is by clicking on any row in this data set and then go to Insert, Table, and I press OK here. So this is going to be a table, and then if I add more data, you can see here that the ranges I have are limited to a certain row here, to row 59. But this way, if I create a table and if I add more data, my data is going to be updated. So let's just copy any data here. And you can see here, my numbers will actually update when I add more data. If I had not created a table, my numbers would not have updated. So it's a good practice to create a table out of your data set, because this way your ranges here are going to expand. You can see here my ranges are going to be till 78 actually instead of 59. So you can see here the ranges, the criteria ranges have updated. So it's always a good practice to use tables on your data. It's going to save you a lot of work. When you add more data to your data set, everything is just going to be updating correctly. So that's it, guys, for the SUMIF and the SUMIFS COUNTIF and the COUNTIFS function. And this is actually my first video on the channel here with a talking head, with me appearing on the video as well as explaining on the spreadsheet. So let me know what you think of that down below in the comments. And also, if you have any questions, please leave them below in the comments as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching the video. If you like the video, press the like button. Make sure to share it with your friends as well. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so that you'd be notified with each new video. You can download the example workbook through the link below in the description. Make sure as well to check my Excel courses, links below in the description as well. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.